Vienna conference, and there you go. I'm actually talking to you from not at home. I'm up and visiting my daughter up in the lands of the Awabakal people in Newcastle. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present up here, and it's great to be finally able to travel, because with the COVID restrictions up till very recently, we haven't been able to leave Sydney, and particularly the part of Sydney I'm living in. So this is a huge adventure for me to be in another part of Sydney or another part of New South Wales, and visiting another part of country that's been looked after for thousands of years by our Indigenous owners, proper owners of the land. So we're going to be showing this film that has been made by Juan, and he has to leave, so he's going to have a few words to say about the film. But it's also been made with Robyn Francis, who we welcome to the CERN community again, and we'll know more about Robyn after seeing the film. And maybe I'll just introduce Juan so he can say a few words, and then the idea is we'll watch the film together and then come back and have a discussion, and possibly it'll be a small discussion with Nadia and Priya about the film, and you know, your reflections on it and what we can do with it. So Juan is a colleague of mine at Western Sydney University. He's a professor of media studies and a filmmaker. Made a few wonderful films, one about Antarctica called Nightfall on Gaia, other films I don't know about, but one that I was involved in called The Bamboo Bridge, and this one that he has made most recently, based on Djanbung Gardens. And Juan, did you want to say a few words before you disappear to your birthday celebrations?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Katherine, and thank you, Robyn, again. I just want to say something very briefly, that my life was changed by meeting Robyn Francis and learning about her, you know, amazing pioneering work that she has done, not only in permaculture, but in a range of other fields, you know, in community economies, the way that she has constructed a wonderful beacon of hope for us to learn how to live in this world differently. So I feel immensely honored to have had the opportunity not only to study with her and do the Permaculture Design Course, but thankful that she trusted me in capturing a glimpse of her work and her life under quite difficult circumstances. So I think the outcome has been quite wonderful, considering how difficult it was to make the film for a range of reasons. So I think the film has the beauty of being an honest film that was filmed with very scarce resources. So it's has no paraphernalia. It's just an honest film about a very honest life's work dedicated to the beautiful Djanbung Gardens. So thank you, Katherine, for allowing us this space to show the film. And thank you, Robyn and Nadia and Prior, for turning up.
So, Juan, if you could just tell us a little bit about the circumstances, the kind of climatic circumstances under which you were making the film.
Well, it's been 2 years of, you know, pandemic, so everyone it's a bit on edge. It was the monsoon time, the rainy season up north in northern New South Wales. So it rained non-stop for pretty much 14 days. The garden was very wet. We were all very wet. I was very wet. And it was, you know, a tense moment also personally. So I think it was a matter of getting to trust each other and finding the right moments to be at peace, so we could tell the story. And I think that was the tricky thing, that we were able to find those moments to tell a story.
And you mentioned last time the fact that you're actually exploring the option of making films outside of the kind of major grant structure of the film industry, and that this, you know, is something that you have to do more of, which I think we in the Community Economies Research Network would also like to do more of.
Yeah, I think in different parts of history, filmmakers and media makers have demonstrated that there are options to work outside of the industrial model of production, as you do with the economies. There's alternative ways to practice economies, and I think there's a link there to alternative ways of practice media making and storytelling that does not depend on some of the industrial or capitalist modes of media making. So I think this film is a testament to alternative ways of storytelling through film that I think, I hope they work.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
Making some time to talk at the beginning. So
no, the honor is all mine. I really love working with Katherine and Robyn. I feel really honored. You are two of my most important teachers. So I am really honored for this opportunity. Thank you. I'm sorry to leave earlier.
The other person is Rowena, who was the editor of the film, who also would have was at the first one too.
Yep. Enjoy the film, and I'll see you later.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
For your celebration.
Yeah, enjoy the birthday. So the plan is to all of us now to go to the link that's in the chat and watch the film independently, and then come back to the room and have a discussion for about half an hour or so. So the film goes for about 37 minutes, and make sure you watch it right to the end, because there's some very exciting material, which I'd love to hear more about, Robyn, right at the end of the film. So
can we just click on the link? Will it?
Yeah, you should.
We'll still be in the Zoom, right? Even if I click on the link.
Yeah.
And I will know how to get back, will I?
I'm pretty sure I'll just leave the Zoom on, and when I think so. That's what we did last time, right, Katherine?
Yeah, I'm just
Yes,
going
that's
to.
right. Just just leave the Zoom going and mute yourself.
And I'm going to stop video on mine as well, because it then just saves the bandwidth.
Yes, so stop your video, stop your mute, but just leave everything else on, and then just go to the link. And let me. Oops, I just forgot to turn it on.
In the early noughties, somebody introduced me to what you could do on computers with composition and the sound banks of whole orchestras, and so this frustrated composer within could start creating all this lush ambient music and all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
But the permaculture song was from when? What era was that?
I wrote that in the late 80s, and the clip was made. I suppose the title track of my album, Songs of a Green Gorilla. And
Green Gorilla.
Yeah. In 86, I was in New York City, and I was doing some research for the Earth Bank Society on what was happening with ethical investments and community economics and stuff in the States, and visiting community gardens, and I'd heard of the Green Gorillas Incorporated, so I visited them, and it really inspired me. There were some wonderful things, going on, and so that inspired that crazy song. And we actually recorded it. The clip was made in Lismore, and during a advanced design course, and somebody had a mini moke, and so we ran around town with lots of chocos. A friend gave us a few bags of chocos from her prolific choco vine. Just a perfect hand grenade for the Green Gorilla.
Yes. No, it's just great to having a second life now in this film.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe it'd be nice to hear some responses from people like Nadia. Maybe you'd like to have a chance to reflect on the film, and Prior and Kat, if you'd like to too. So maybe Nadia, do you want to go first? Just any reflections you had?
Okay. Well, I made some notes. It's just a medley of impressions or ideas and questions. Is goanna mongoose? Is it the same thing?
What's that?
The animal, goanna?
Goanna? No, it's not a mongoose.
It's like a really big lizard. They can get
Yeah.
up to, nearly 2 meters long.
Oh, okay. And I was fascinated by the allusions to the Aboriginal people, and the painting you have there was wonderful with the mongoose and
The platypus was the
Platypus.
with the
Oh, the platypus, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any links at all to the Aboriginal people who?
Yes, I would not have that name unless it was actually given to me by the senior elder and lawkeeper of the Bunjalung Nation. And for me, I went through the proper channels to get a name, and that was given to me with a story, and yeah, it means a lot. And I've got they're very good local Aboriginal friends, and we've also hosted cultural festivals here on our property. And yeah.
That's very interesting. It's something we really don't have here. I mean, and I think it's so wonderful that now people in Australia and in the States acknowledge the original custodians of the land, and it feels very heartening to me. So I thought that was lovely that there's this link, and then I had some is the terminological conundrum, how to call this kind of activity. So you mentioned we don't talk about self-sufficiency because that sounds rather individualistic, but instead use self-reliance, right?
Yeah.
And you see this as being self-reliance on a community level.
Yeah, I mean, like, self-sufficiency means completely sufficient unto yourself. You've got the sheep that you shear to spin the wool to make your own clothes, and you tan the hide of the cow you slaughtered to make your own boots. And I mean, who's got that time? It's about community.
Yeah.
And everybody's got their speciality, and like each property has got its different potential in terms of what it will produce, and give willingly. And so at the heart of permaculture is not just sort of, trying to do everything for yourself in your own little patch, but to actually reach out and to embrace community, so that we've got all the skills and all the knowledge and the diversity that we need to really sustain ourselves. And it's, we had a really big bushfire here 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago this month. And ancient rainforests that have never, ever, ever burnt. They go right back to Gondwana, when there were only 2 land masses on planet Earth. It's some of the most ancient trees on the planet. And they were burning. And the valley right next door, a community of 350 people had to be evacuated into the, down here next door. To my place near the village. And I mean, the way the community pull together, and there's every skill that you need to be able to survive when there's a crisis, or when things break down, or we get cut off from the world by floods. That happens as well. And so it's on that, if we can think about sustainability as a community activity, and a community outcome, and a community enterprise, because that's how we're going to survive. It's the survival of the most, survival depends on cooperation, not competition. Yeah. And so permaculture is not just about, techniques to grow veggies. It's about a permanent or a sustainable culture, and a culture in its broadest context as, you know, what enables human survival.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. For me, the two terms as a non-English speaking person, self-sufficiency and self-reliance, they sound similar unless you add the community level, which you did actually. So there, do you know Ariel Sala? I don't know exactly how you pronounce her name.
Yeah, Ariel Sala. Yeah, she's a feminist ecologist, philosopher.
Yeah,
in Sydney now.
yeah, and she doesn't like the word subsistence because it seems to have a bad name. She's a champion also of indigenous locally based economies and so on, and she uses self-sufficiency. I think I believe she even has self-sufficiency in her book.
Okay.
But
I mean, some people like the word. We just don't tend to use it. We prefer the word self-reliance because it's more relative. And I think people's expectations for a complete self-sufficiency are very different to when you're talking about how can I be more self-reliant? Or how can we be more self-reliant? Yeah.
So it links in with the Polanyian term of reciprocity, right? Like reciprocity.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the third permaculture ethic is fair share, which is about reciprocity and intergenerational equity and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Where did those ethics, did Bill Mollison actually formulate those ethics?
He formulated those, care of the earth, care of people, and fair share. And fair share is not just dispersing surplus, it's also recognizing and working within limits to growth and consumption. And a lot of people like to sort of forget about that.
Well, I think it would be great if somehow this ethics developed by Bill Mollison were married to the ethics of care, which was developed by these feminist sociologists and philosophers. I was thinking of the care for nature, right, which is the basis of permaculture. And there's this book which I discovered recently, Ethics of Care by Virginia Held. And there's a whole lot of philosophers who sort of say we don't like the ethics of Immanuel Kant or the ethics of individualism, utilitarianism. We are developing a brand new ethics of care, but don't extend it enough to nature or the non-human world or whatever you like to call it. And it's a struggle for us, to extend it. I think the economy should encompass care for people, and they speak a lot about child care centers, etc., and communal child care centers, etc., but also care for nature. And for a lot of people, this doesn't just connect. So I'm just thinking, listening to you, it would be maybe very interesting to connect, if Bill Mollison has already developed these ideas, to connect it somehow.
These were established in the late 70s. And I mean, it's really important that the first ethic is care of the earth, because without a healthy environment, healthy soil, air we can breathe, water we can drink, I mean, you've got to have that before you can really care for people. It's part and parcel. You're not caring for people if you're not caring for the environment that provides all our needs. And it's not so, and I mean, it's anthropocentric in terms of its, looking carefully at our human footprint and what is the impact of how we meet our needs. But what comes first is nature, because without a healthy nature, we have nothing. And a part of a healthy nature is all beings. And so, we're totally committed to species conservation and restoration, and because everything's interconnected. You lose one one plant species, it can ripple through and impact on 40 different other animal and insect species. It's and eventually the effect ripples onto us.
So this would go in well with the idea of the goal of the economy is flourishing, right? Which is Katherine Gibson and everybody, your colleagues are writing in your books, right? Flourishing of people and of nature, which should be the goal of economics rather than profit. And this could be underpinned by these ethics, by these new ethics, not totalitarianism, but
yeah, I think, and you know, the ethic of care for nature is the one that's least kind of accepted or recognized in a way, and it's difficult to get that on the agenda. Even, you know, the ways in which people are talking about challenging climate change, it's all in order to get care for humans up there rather than the actual care for the atmosphere and the earth seems to be, you know, I don't know, the sort of sense in which we need to re-examine what we're doing that's uncared seems to be so hard to get on the agenda. Yeah.
Exactly. I read the book and there's just almost nothing about care. Of course, that's 15 years for nature, I mean, you know, it's all about care for people.
Yeah.
That's 15 years ago, so maybe we should somehow link this together.
So I'm wondering, I don't know, Priya or Kat, would you like to give some responses to the film too?
Yep.
Maybe?
I just made some quick notes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katherine and Robyn and Juan for really sharing this fantastic work. And I find the message really powerful, especially on the idea of respecting the laboring or the contribution of you know, nature, the more than human, the earth others in, you know, providing us what we need, but also really recognizing their you know, entanglement with us, and without them we'll not be able to really, you know, survive in this really, you know, challenging times. And I really find the points made by Robyn on, you know, sustainability being something that is negotiated between the poles of you know, generative and degenerative. I find it really, you know, interesting. And also I resonate with the idea of self-reliance as really something that is, you know, really, I mean, the self is the centered because reliance is really interdependent. And I like that qualification that it has to be thought in relation to the community level when, you know, we really think of not just people, but also others included as part of that community. I think some of my one of the questions that, you know, I kind of thought about was when permaculture is talked about, it always just relates to food security. But I wonder if there are, you know, activities associated, let's say, of how agriculture is integrated with, let's say, the construction industry, like around building materials, like planting something that can be used for materials, because I'm really interested in that aspect of, you know, thinking differently about building construction. And another one is I really enjoyed, I think this is a very technical side of things, I really enjoyed Juan's direction similar to the bamboo bridge because of how he incorporates the natural sounds, and you know, you can feel the materialities that are very much entangled alongside the voices of the people who are included in the video. And the scene, the thunderstorm scene, the pre-thunderstorm, that was really powerful, and you can really sense that, you know, these are all happening all at the same times when the film was being shot. And for Katherine, I wonder whether, you know, I'd like to listen to your experience producing this in, you know, in comparison to the bamboo bridge. I mean, that might be too extreme to compare, but I'd like to listen more about your experience producing this other film.
So maybe Robyn, would you like to respond to Priya's question about building materials? Because I think that's a really...
Yeah, well, permaculture is, you know, about how we provide all our human needs. and what pressures we're putting on other communities when we demand that they provide them for us. And so central to permaculture, just as, you know, when you've got food, shelter, water, I mean, these are absolute bottom line essentials. And so in our permaculture training, we cover passive solar house design, natural building materials, looking at what local materials you have and how it suits the local climate, and finding the most appropriate, you know, sort of solution in terms of materials, in terms of technologies. So it's not one sort of strict, rigid set of things like, you know, here I've used some of my soil to make earth bricks. And so I've got this lovely earth brick classroom because it's not a climate for straw bale. And when I built this, you know, hempcrete wasn't available, but we've, you know, used a number of lovely natural materials here and sustainably harvested local hardwoods. So, you know, permaculture addresses these things. I've trained many architects who, you know, are bringing permaculture thinking and strategies into their architecture, likewise builders. And some of my graduates, you know, I've got, you know, sort of rammed earth companies, and there's a lady who did a course with me a couple of years ago. She's got a natural building company down at Byron Bay, and you know, doing cob and earth chips and hempcrete, and yeah, lots of really good creative stuff.
Yeah,
that's what I love about permaculture, is how it brings all these things together as a totality.
Yeah, terrific.
But Prior and I have been involved in a project in, you know, looking at community economy practices in Asia, and particularly, you know, well, both in terms of sharing resources, but also, you know, the way in which the Asian communities used, you know, plant material basically as both food and their, you know, building materials and all these, as opposed to Western culture, which was so focused around minerals and so on. So, you know, there was a geographer that used to call the monsoon Asia as the plant kingdom. And yet that's all been displaced now with, I mean, Prior's written a thesis all about the use of concrete and who are the people who...
And I mean, that's part of the colonialisation of
that's
the planet.
Right.
Enforcing these, you know, these ideals. And it's interesting, you know, some of my graduates, many of them actually work in what you might call third world countries, but one in India, you know, there was grants available from the government for rural people, poor rural people, to build a house, you know, 6,000 rupees. And so they built 2 different houses to show what could be done, because everybody wanted a cement house. So the cement house was 2 meters by 3.5 meters. And then they built a house that was all built from local materials, and it was 5 times the size. Yeah, and people still went, oh, but it looks poor, because they associate those readily available local materials as poverty. And so then they sort of came up with an idea of mix and match. And so they got local weavers to do woven panels to put in between timber posts, and they put a really thin cement render on that. So instead of cement walls that are that thick, you end up with a cement wall that's only that thick. So you're not getting that thermal storage for that. It's absolute hell in a tropical climate. Yeah. And it had that sort of that clean look, but it used less than 10% of the cement that would have been used in. So sometimes you've got to just sort of compromise a little and mix and match, but finding things that are culturally acceptable. I think it's Paul Gunter, the Blue Economy, in one of his talks, he talks about bamboo buildings in Colombia. And there was a lot of resistance until they designed a bamboo house that had a balcony, because only rich people have balconies.
Yeah, yeah.
And so just the addition of a balcony suddenly made these lovely bamboo houses totally acceptable. So
It's fascinating.
You know, we've always got to work with culture, and I sort of like to think of it as sort of like cultural ecology, is sort of what permaculture is largely about.
And the science really is something that has to be negotiated with place-based existing practices. Thank you, Robyn.
So just in answer to your question prior, I played a very small role, really just helping with some funding and giving some feedback on the first cut, which I think Robyn and I had some very similar views as to how it could have been reorganized to help the narrative be clearer. But I guess, I think I'm very sympathetic with Juan's attempts to try and allow the natural world to have a voice in his films. And that's really, I think he was able to achieve that pretty well in terms of the way he interspersed the human voice with the voices of, the whipbirds and the water and then the imagery of the plants and the bats and all the other animals and so on. So he's just a genius at that. And by the way, Rowena is a genius at cutting. I mean, the editing that she did, I think, and in terms of changing it from the first cut to the second and third and fourth cuts, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, it's, he's very keen to do more. And I think this is, it's such a wonderful mode of communication of, complexity, but also the affective realm film to get over these questions. Yeah.
It's so inspiring that I can think of other similar activities I can do in the future. Thank you for sharing this story.
Kat, did you want to make a comment? I'm not sure whether you're still there or not, or putting 3 children to bed. Maybe not. I was wondering though, Robyn, how you're thinking about the future in terms of where, how you mentioned that, working with human communities is sometimes some of the most difficult part of work of permaculture, and communities working together. And I'm just wondering about the question of kind of intergenerational building on what you've done now, and how are you thinking about that in the future for who will take over the garden or help keep running it into the next few generations?
Well, look, I did have a succession plan, but it just got blown to smithereens a year ago. So,
no.
So we're just in the process of reassessing how things move forward. Because I'm 70, so I'm not going to be. The next 20 years aren't going to be like the last 20 years.
No.
We're going to be sitting down with some planners and just looking at options and looking at how the place can sort of move ahead and have more people living here. So just get a little bit more of a living community happening on the property to help sustain it, because it's got.
I mean, how is that working for the Djanbung group that all set up?
Jalamba is the community.
Jalamba. I mean, they must be of a similar age group to some extent, because they all.
Oh no! Look, there's all ages there. It's very age diverse.
Okay. Yeah.
Jalamba is very, very age diverse.
And so when have people sold properties and others come in, or is it family members that have taken?
There's been rollovers and one of the original people there, Shirley. She was an artist, sort of. I suppose she would have been in her mid to late 60s when she moved on to Jalamba, built a lovely house, and then. 10 years later, her daughter actually bought a property on there and moved on and raised her kids there. And then, you know, Shirley, mum, got a bit too old to do her own place. And so her daughter built a granny flat on the back of her house, just down the road. And then, you know, they ended up moving back to Shirley's house in the end and selling the other house. And so, I mean, there's really cute little relationships that have happened here over the years. And I mean, some people have, you know, moved on because their lives have changed, and you know, career and work opportunities have come up, and or you know, it's just not really being what they thought it would be, or their fantasy didn't mesh with reality.
The fact that there was it was a pioneer of a different kind of land title was really important, I think, that you pointed out.
Yeah, and I actually, in 1983, I was part of a group that lobbied to get that land title in, and it was wonderful to have that opportunity to put it into practice. I
wish it had become more generalised, you know, or even community land trusts and so on. There's still a lot of resistance to setting them up.
Yeah, look, it depends what you're doing. The downside of the community title is that because each of the lots have got individual freehold title within the community parcel, all the rules of subdivision apply, and so it's sort of quite costly to set one up compared to, say, like the multiple occupancies. But I think, you know, with strata title's ideal for things like, you know, co-housings and housing cooperatives, and I'd really like to see more co-housings and housing co-ops and things happen in Australia. And you know, permaculture has really been at the forefront of a lot of the global eco-village network and things that are happening there. And it's it's just so important that we look at sustainable human settlements, not just individual properties.
Nadia, did you want to make another comment?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have time.
We've got a few more minutes, maybe about 3 or 4 more minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's probably not time enough to explain the land title. Is probably specific in some way to Australia, but if there is some general idea behind it, because I didn't really get it. I mean, how is it different from any other land title?
Look, even in Australia, every state has got different things. You know, I mean, New South Wales is as different to Queensland, is as different to New Zealand, is as different to, and I don't know how many different systems I have in the US. So what's important are the principles, and then you look at what legal structures are available in terms of land tenure, in terms of governance, in terms of, you know, shared ownership and responsibility. And so this is one of my big passions, actually, is sort of looking at this sort of whole of community, you know, governance, legal structure, tenure, land ownership, physical environment, how the physical environment nurtures the social environment and interactions. And it's
I guess
really
one thing to say is that Australia, up until quite recently, has had one of the highest levels of private home ownership and very little commitment or respect for even rental properties, but certainly very little communal or common community ownership of housing or cooperative housing. I mean, it's very small compared to, say, Britain, for instance, or even the US. So it's been a real struggle to kind of get a diversity of property types accepted in this country. I mean, there's a lot of diversity there, but I think, and now more and more young people aren't able to, the whole property market is just crazy, and it's one of the places that all wealth is being accrued. And so young people, younger generations are having a harder and harder time to get into that property market. and yet we're not seeing a lot of support for these alternative ways of managing property and access to housing, which is, I think, you know, the what you're talking about, Robyn, is why it's so important for to people to see that it can work.
And that's where things like ethical investments comes into play, and and reclaiming the commons. And like here, Nimbin, you know, the community has collectively purchased and owns through community organisations so much real estate, and we just acquired another piece of land. And it's amazing when people actually start to put together. What I really would like to see this community do, though, is to start to invest into some affordable housing, you know, sort of almost like, you know, a cluster of tiny houses around a central facility, sort of a mini co-housing, because there's just such a crisis, and it's not just young people. There are people that have never been privileged enough to own property, that haven't had parents that have been able to, you know, give them an inheritance, and when you look at homelessness, women over 55.
Yeah, older women. Yeah,
fastest growing demographic of homelessness, and it's happening up here. It's not just in the cities. And affordable housing, you know, is just a really, really urgent thing. And if, you know, people put together, so just set up a cooperative and have different categories of shareholders in the cooperative. So there's like investment ones, and then, you know, you have people who are, you know, can buy their own unit or apartment, and could be set up as a strata title, or all these things are possible. But I mean, you find 100 people that have got, you know, 10,000 that they could invest.
Yeah.
And suddenly you can start to do stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I know we've probably come to I mean, this is another whole topic, and it would be a great one to do a film about, because I think people need more models of that, exactly what you're talking about, you know, of not being too scared to do it, because I think that's been the issue, that people are very risk averse when it comes to housing. But as you say, the housing crisis is really huge. So, but I'm conscious of the time. It's 9:30 here, and we've wrap it up. But it's been fascinating, and it's been a great opportunity. Thank you, Robyn, to have the chance to actually talk to you and ask questions and find out more. And wonderful, Nadia, that you could join us. And it would be great for you. I guess like we could send the link for Robyn to look at your film, Nowtopia, which is an interesting, a different kind of film about all sorts of experiments going on in Brunei. And yeah, it'd be great we could have some change. Yeah.
I also wanted to thank you very much. It was just lovely. I felt I was there inside with you, inside that wonderful landscape. So thank you. It was a very encouraging film. It sort of nurtured me in a way. So thank you for that as well.
Yes, I noticed Tom mentioned how lush the environment seems compared to parts of Europe at the moment. So I think, we all love to come and visit. That's right, Prior. Yeah. Well, very much, Robyn, and hopefully we can keep in touch for the opportunity to show the film to our small members of people, and we'll certainly put the link to others in the network who'd like to watch it.
And is the bamboo bridge, is it also accessible somewhere?
Because it's being shown in a festival at the moment. It's not exactly open access yet, but it soon will be, because Juan needed to get it out into some festivals to get some recognition for what he's done. But I think very soon they'll be just sending the link to people so they can use it in teaching and so on. It's a much longer film, of course. The good thing about this one, I think, is it's perfect for teaching, because it's long enough, you know, where you can still have a discussion around it in the classroom. So hopefully it'll get used a lot. Yeah. Okay, well, stop the recording, and I'll
Thank you, Katherine.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm very, very happy that we've been able to organise this. Okay,
Thank you
Thank
also.
you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night.
say goodbye. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Okay.
See you. Bye-bye.
No,
See you.